right, guys, welcome back to episode 40.
Whoa.
We're almost at a year of the Canadian Real Estate Homefront podcast. I'm joined with my lovely host, Brooke Hicks.
Hello.
Lots to talk about today. A little 2-year ban on international students. The Bank of Canada held their rates. We'll get into it more.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Should we turn off the AC? Do you think people can still hear us?
Yeah. Producer Nick can go do that.
Okay. He's going to go do that. We'll
I
continue.
can still talk. All right, I'll talk. All right, first topic here. So the feds introduced a 2-year cap on international students, citing real integrity issues. The federal government introducing a 2-year cap on international students for 2024. The cap is expected to bring the number of approved study permits down to 364,000.
From what?
Which would be 35% decrease. 35% decrease over 2023 levels. I think there was over 500,000 in 2020.
Yeah, in 2023.
Yeah. In the spirit of fairness, they're also allocating the cap space by province based on population. This is what the immigration.
Wait, I want to interrupt.
Yeah, go.
In 2020 and 2021, no, but those 2 years that everything was shut down for a long time, did we not have anybody come? I'd imagine no. So did we talk about how 2023 being so high maybe it made up for the years that we didn't bring in international students?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because they they made immigration way higher than it was
because they were trying to make up
right? And people were like, "Oh my God, you're bringing in so many people. You brought in 1 million people," but neglecting to be like aware of the fact that for 2 years nobody came in. So if you were to divide that by 3 years, it maybe still wasn't absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
is that a thing?
Maybe, but I think too that a lot of cities are like,
yeah, for sure, we're
desperately dying.
We are beyond our capacity.
Yeah, beyond the capacity. So, where were we here? Oh, in the spirit of fairness, we're also allocating the cap space by province based on population. Some provinces will see much more significant reductions. We'll continue to work closely with these provinces and territories to put these measures into place, as they will be responsible for determining how the cap is distributed between its designated learning institutions that they have jurisdiction over. So that's pretty interesting. So Miller mentioned that he's been in talks with officials in Ontario and British Columbia already, and the consensus is that more needs to be done to properly support international students and cut down on bad actors, and more specifically, private colleges that are making money hand over fist off international enrollment. So there's been a lot of like photos on Twitter that I've seen of strip mall colleges, like basically like made up colleges. Like Brooke Hicks Institutional Economics and Finance. Like it's insane. And it's like, so what they do is they get recruiters to go get students. The recruiter gets paid. The student comes, obviously pays an exorbitant amount. Right. And, obviously the term puppy mill. Yeah. It's a paper mill. Like they're just giving out, they're giving out diplomas, making hand over fist money. And of course, like the backlash was from these colleges. They were like, what the federal government doing isn't right. Like they're going to hurt us. Well, of course they're going to hurt us because you took advantage of a system for so long.
Oh my God, that's a lot to digest.
I know that is a lot to digest.
That is a lot to digest. So we've always said that if there was some sort of housing plan to the people that are coming to these colleges, like residences expanding or some sort of plan for housing, because we talk a lot about these people come and they go to these schools. Good for them. Good for the colleges even making money. That's besides the point, because we're in a housing crisis. That's what we're talking about, is that there's too many people putting pressure on the housing system right now, which is causing a lot of backlash. Like, good for the colleges making money. Like, we can talk about that another day. But it's the too many people in the system. So it's interesting to think, though, because if they hadn't have let that many more people in after those COVID years that it was shut down, I read an article that the economy would have shrunk, would have shrunk too much. So they wanted to avoid that. So they needed to like gear up to increase or keep the economy on a level that they wanted to see moving forward. So what would have been the consequence if, 2 years off, then the next year they didn't overshoot for those years, and they just, 2 years off, but we're going to continue with the same amount of people. Like, where would we be at now? Is that what they should have done?
I think they obviously overshot, because this wouldn't be an issue and they wouldn't be capping it if they didn't. But I read that
Do you think that is one of the key roles in what is putting so much pressure on our housing market in the GTA, international students? Or is it not enough.
I wouldn't say GTA. I would say that it puts too much pressure on cities like Conestoga as an example, and I think that's in Waterloo or Kitchener. Like cities like that where the infrastructure isn't there to handle that many people at one time, and then you have so many people like sharing a room. Like even like an example, they made like a joke. They said, oh, Brampton landlords are going to be hurt because they have so many students in Brampton, which you probably wouldn't even know about, but they do, living in basements.
Right.
And now that will get capped. Like there was actually Brampton residents that were protesting, not the international cap, but Brampton wants to put in like a rental license program or something like that. So they were protesting that. So yeah, I think that, and what they're actually doing, and what they said is that these institutions will be responsible for where these students live. They're going to tie the number of study permits to the amount of housing that the school is providing.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Now we're getting somewhere, because you even look at Kitchener. If I were to log on MLS right now and say Kitchener leases, like condos for lease, there's probably a ton of them. Realistically, it's not like people are like, I have nowhere to go. It's a matter of price and being able to qualify. So if there was some sort of way that these students, landlords could see them being a better fit as a tenant, because that's a huge reason why these people are struggling to find places, because there's inventory available. It's not like you literally can't go apply to 10. You can. It's the fact that, yes, they are pretty high priced. And secondly, when you're coming from overseas and you don't have a Canadian credit score, you're going to struggle to find a place. So those are, I think, two of the major concerns that people don't realize, is that there are places. There is. There's tons in Hamilton for lease. I've had a lease up for 3 weeks. I'm like, why isn't this moving? Advertising it everywhere. There's places for lease. But the realistic example is that my landlord in this specific one I'm talking about is like, no, I'm not accepting that application. So we sit vacant.
Yeah. I think that, I think you're right. There's leases in places, but I think it's actually way worse than we know in these university towns. Like there was a guy, he had to go help his daughter find a place. They would wait 45 minutes outside this one house, and there was a line of students just going in to see it. Like this is when you know you have a problem. There was students in Waterloo I talked about probably like weeks and weeks ago, 3 months ago. They're going door to door asking if there was a room available.
So then it's more rooms, because a student doesn't have a budget of $1,900 to rent a condo.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't have 3 other friends he can live in a house with.
He has $500 per room. So
I think
the student.
And then there was, students living on the streets, like they were living like in tents and stuff like that. So I think it is as bad as what they're saying. But, our market's a little bit different because we don't work.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from people's experience, especially people that are struggling with this. I don't want to say, hey, like there's so much available. And I'm not being, I'm not ignoring the fact that I know this is a crisis. And I don't want in any means to be insensitive to anybody that could be listening to this and is struggling with this very issue. But I want to actually get to the specifics, because when anybody talks about an issue, whether it be like the amount of students coming here, immigration, all of that, it's very broad. And then if we break it down to like, okay, what is actually the problem here? Is it students that have that $500 budget, which you don't really find rooms for rent that often, even in Canada as a whole, right? Yeah. Is it the money? Like, let's break it down more. And that's what I'm trying to do, rather than.
Yeah, no, actually, I do think it really is that bad. When I went to university, I remember it was decently hard, but not as bad as what I read now on Twitter. Like, wow.
Yeah, I guess there's not a lot of student housing. It's more leases for families, couples, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Because even if, a bunch of students came and put an application, it's, as a landlord, you're going to have a little bit more skepticism because of the fact that they're young, not really working. If they are, it's part-time.
From another country, don't have the credentials.
And then students have the stigma of, oh, they're in their party days.
Yeah.
They're going to throw parties, or they're not going to treat it like their home. Whereas maybe a single family with a kid will actually treat it like that's their home.
For sure. I don't disagree at all. Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I think the cap will be a good thing. I think that as an institution that's providing schooling for someone, you should have a housing plan for them when they come here for sure.
Totally.
I think that it's a good thing. So anyways, I think the non-permanent residence thing is coming next down the pipeline. And a lot of it has to do with polling numbers, in my opinion, right? It's people are talking, people are saying, this needs to change. There's too much stress on housing, and it's not to blame students. And to be honest, I think that what we're seeing is a decline anyways. Of people wanting to come here for schooling, because it's just
the message is being
translated. The gravy train's over. So anyways, next topic here. Do you want to read it?
I got it. Okay. Bank of Canada holds key interest rate at 5% for the 4th straight time. We were expecting that. I put a poll on my Instagram, hold, raise, decrease, and it was like 86% hold. So people are realizing what's going on with the economy. Like the inflation rose a little bit, so there wasn't enough data to say, okay, we should start decreasing, despite the fact that there's a lot of people obviously struggling with their mortgage payments. There wasn't enough for him for Tiff Macklem to start decreasing, especially before spring market. So I think everyone was pretty on par with what he did, and at least are getting it, because when he raised it for the 5th time or however many times in a row, I forget how many times in a row he raised it, people were like shocked, and then it's like this uproar, but it was kind of silent. People are like, that's what we expected.
Yeah, we expected this time.
Okay, the hold was largely expected, with many economists predicting in the weeks leading up to Wednesday's announcement that a rate cut was not yet on the table. Although inflation has come down significantly since its peak of 8.1% in June 2022, sitting at 3.4% last month, it has not stayed a consistent month after month downward trend. Yeah, it's done those little pivot upwards, but overall it's come down, but bumpy.
8.1 was the peak. It's been a bumpy ride down.
The bank said it is expecting a lowering of inflation, but likely not until the second half of the year. The bank's target inflation rate of 2% isn't expected to be reached until 2025.
Yeah. So they did say in a previous meeting that they'll look at cutting before they hit 2%.
Yeah.
So they don't think
because mortgage interest is a huge reading in inflation. So if mortgage interest cost is so high, it'll be tough to get inflation down to 2 with that being so high and a key reader in inflation. That means everything else will have to come down so substantially if that stays high. So he'll have to actually cut the rates for our inflation reading to be 2%. Which is interesting.
It is interesting.
You know what I heard is somebody's like, I don't want to buy because inflation's like coming down, meaning like they're thinking house prices are going to come down. What I always have to remind people is that, yes, inflation's coming down and we still want to continue further down to 2%, but that doesn't mean house prices are declining. That just means they're climbing at 2%, meaning they are still going up just at 2%. They're not, when inflation is coming down, that just means it's coming, how do I explain it? The amount that certain product or good or service is going up is lower than it was, but it's still going up.
Yeah. It's, I think it'll be interesting to see going forward. I mean, I'm still of I think 25 basis points in the summer. It was
you bet 3 basis points cut?
I said two cuts.
You said 2 cuts.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We'll have to revisit our predictions for 2024.
Yeah, I said
we're on track.
Summer and then Christmas time.
You said 2? I said 4.
You said 4, yeah. It might be 3, but we'll see. We'll see what house prices do. I think they're watching that pretty heavily as well. What's going on there? So, yeah, we'll see.
There's so many other factors in inflation, though, than just housing. And there's so many other worldly factors that can contribute to Canada's inflation, like food, for example.
Oil. Oil is so big. It's so
our
volatile.
food chains, coming from other countries and then wars happening. There's so many more. There's so many more things at stake than just Canada not spending as much, right? There's so many other things that having these high interest rates, I don't think is the key role in getting inflation back to 2. A lot of things need to happen that actually are a little bit out of our control if you look at some of the metrics in an inflation reading, like the supply chain.
Yeah, I actually got just to touch on this, I actually got a check in my bank, like a direct deposit.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this? It was like the Climate Incentive Act for
See, it's
$122 or something.
hilarious. My sister got that. I didn't get
You
one.
didn't get one?
Why didn't I get
I
one?
actually wanted to look into like, how did I qualify for this?
That's
Like,
so funny.
but I
She
almost
got
just want to be like, why don't you guys put it to the deficit? Like, why don't you
Yeah.
keep that and just like, let's try and get that
Cortez, I need
deficit
your money.
down. Yeah. Let's balance the budget.
That's so funny. So yeah, Jamie, my younger sister got one, but my other sister didn't. I didn't, and I keep hearing some people did, some people didn't, and
I have no idea
this
why
is
I
like
got it. Yeah.
weeks ago. So if
Maybe
I
it's
was
'cause
getting it, I would have
Maybe because
gotten it.
I drive a Tesla or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I want to look into that actually.
So funny. Maybe because I drive a Tesla.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Cool.
All right, third one here. This one just like, I don't even know what's going on in Toronto anymore, but Toronto eyes a new tax to clamp down on foreign buyers. Toronto is flirting with the idea of introducing a new foreign buyers tax. So they have one, but they want to put a new one in. A move that could help the city clamp down on speculative home buying and generate as much as $15 million in revenue in 2025 alone. A report prepared by Chief Financial Officer and Treasury Stefan Conforti says that the proposed municipal non-resident speculation tax is set at 10% and would go into effect in 2025. That's, of course, if it gets the green light from the executive committee. So city staff are saying that a tax will help free up Toronto real estate for residents by deterring foreign home purchases. The thinking is that this will help put a lid on price growth, at least to some degree. So it's just more foreign home buyer speculation, basically, like more tax on foreign buyers. I don't know, like, why don't they start measuring it and putting out the data to it? It's so hard to measure who's buying it, and like, is that actually going to do something?
It's hard to gather that data too. Like, think about it.
Man, even like when I started in the business, like there's been so many added taxes and we still haven't got real estate prices under control.
Well, I like think about Canada though, what Canada's driven on.
Tax money,
and our economy, like real estate is the core of Canada.
Yeah.
Like most people have their money in real estate.
Our GDP is so dependent on
our
real estate.
GDP is so dependent on real estate in Canada, and it's not like what we see in the States. Like a lot of people have their money in the stock market. The government's not going to let the stock market fail in the States because too many people's livelihoods are at stake. It would be a way worse.
Be a catastrophe.
I'm like trying to think of a big word. It would be a way worse consequence if they let that happen and people lose all their money that they have invested in the stock market in the States, that they won't let that happen. Whereas real estate, it almost would be even more of a consequence with the amount of people that have their money and their life savings in real estate in Canada if they let that them come down. And not to say that the government controls house prices like the push of a button.
But they do have a hand in it for sure.
They do have a hand in it, but the like ultimate crash that people think is coming, I just don't think it'll happen because on the flip side of that, yes, okay, it's good for some people. Now people can afford a house. Canada's money is very much tied up in real estate, and that's just how it is.
And who owns all the real estate? Well, the big 6 Canadian banks.
Yeah. So there's way more of a consequence if something like a big housing crash crisis were to happen.
Why do you think they extended amortizations to 70, 80 years? Because the big banks are like, well. So
yeah, the amount of principal I've paid off in one of my houses in a year was like $301. Like,
interest heavy.
60 grand in interest.
That's crazy.
More. 7 times 12, like 8, almost 90 grand in interest, $301 off my principal.
Yeah, I think my mortgage is 2,200 interest, 800 principal.
Well, that's good. Per month?
Yeah, per month, yeah.
Oh, no, 301 for the year I paid off.
I know, yours is way worse, but even when I look at mine, I'm like, oof. But I know Canadian mortgages are generally, the first 10 years, they're interest heavy. Yeah, so then once you get past, it's like a sliding scale. Yeah. So once you get past that, and that's the thing. It's like right now, if I'm not paying off kind of my principal, it is a rental property in 25 years because my amortization never got pushed because I make those payments. In 25 years, that $1 million house is going to be mortgage free. Yeah. And it'll be 100% cash flow, and I'll have $1 million house that I can retire on. Yeah. In 25 years. And I won't even be retired in 25 years. Have you made a will yet? Don't forget it. You're on it. Don't forget about your little buddy over here. when that thing's paid off, then not right now. I don't want the 300. You'll see my debt. Yeah. Put me on your will in 25 years. Oh, that's awesome. So funny. Anyways, okay, we got one more topic here. You want to read it? Okay. So you can headline the Instagram. I'm on it.
Okay. It's a real problem. Housing starts across Canada fell 7% in 2023. No surprise there.
Shocker.
We're just not seeing the supply build that we need, said economist Mike Moffat, blaming higher interest rates and a weak economy. And it's a real problem. Actual annual housing starts were down 7% across the country in 2023 compared to 2022 to 223,513. But we're up 5% in the GTA to 47,428. I don't even know what I just read.
Okay, so so basically housing starts were down 7%, but in the GTA,
223,513 in
that was
Ontario.
That was in 2023. No, across the country.
Okay.
But the GTA was up 5%. So they're building a lot more condos essentially.
Okay. So 223,000 housing starts in the country happened in 2023, which is down 7%.
Yeah.
However, if you look at it city to city, Toronto was up to 47,000, which is up 5% from where they previously were.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Exactly.
By year's end, however, the monthly GTA numbers started to fall. The seasonally adjusted annual rates for November to December of 2023 showed GTA housing starts down 35%.
Yeah.
Both the province and the feds have rolled out policies aimed at encouraging more supply, like money for local housing accelerator funds and tax incentives for new rental buildings. But until the interest rates start to come down, many developers are holding off on new projects, which is true. Like, I work on a couple of projects, and it's tough, like, even for buyers, right? So I work on a project out in Niagara region, and these are large units. So the down payment, or the 20% stretch, is high, just because these are like massive condos. So it's for downsizers, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people coming through, but everyone's like, Brooke, my money is tied up in my house. And if this project isn't built for 2.5 years, I'm going to have to use a line of credit. And so to pay your 20% over however many years using my line of credit, that is massive amounts of like interest.
Yeah.
That I'm going to be paying that I can't afford because I'm retired.
And then your occupancy fees too.
Yeah. So that's obviously, it's hurting developers in two ways, because buyers don't want to use their line of credit money or anything to put down, right? Or any money that
money's too expensive.
Yeah. So they don't want to buy because of that. But it's also, you're also charging the developers on the other side of that, of actually the construction loans and like the
carrying costs.
Right.
Yeah. Permits.
So developers are being hit from both angles.
Yeah. Yeah. Even I was talking to a guy, and he does development in Gatineau, Quebec. And he was telling me that it took him a year and a half to get a permit because there was 1 foot of grass on one side that was kind of like a discrepancy. And all he was trying to do was add another unit. He was trying to take a duplex, turn it into a triplex. It took a year and a half to get permits, and going back and forth, and the time value of money. And he was like, everyone wants to say developers are all greedy. And he's like, it's a hard game. He's like, I my carrying cost, like, because what he does is he kind of buys decrepit duplexes.
Yeah.
And then fixes them up, refinances with like a CMHC loan.
Yeah.
And he'll keep doing it to get more doors. But he said the time of it is so long. Like, it takes him forever. And he goes, it's very.
And then you don't want to fill it if it's a decrepit duplex. Number one, you're going to get such low rent if it's in that state anyways. And
how do you get the tenant out?
You can't get them out once it's time. Oh, I got my permit. Great. I'm going to start renovating. You can't just tell them to leave.
Yeah.
So you have to keep it vacant while awaiting the permit, unless
you're
doing
bleeding
some sort of short-term rental. But if it's in that decrepit state, you're not going to be successful at a short-term rental.
Yeah.
So that's tough. Like, carrying costs alone is crazy. Like, even when we're selling houses, like if we get an offer, let's say a little bit below asking or whatever the case may be, and it's new to market, and it's like, let's calculate carrying costs versus this offer that's $10K above. You're like, yeah, I want that over. Think about the closing date, because your carrying costs, a lot is going to interest, right? That interim period, you're not paying down your principal. It's just interest. So it's funny, like a 2-month closing versus a 1-month closing, or 3-month versus 1 month, or whether or not you're going to relist in the spring. I hear that a lot. It's like, okay, how much carrying costs are we going to spend from now until the spring? What is it? A difference of 40 grand. Like, it could be substantial.
Yeah.
Right. 40 grand. Okay. So now we're out 40 grand. So now we need this higher price plus this 40 grand we're paying in carrying costs.
Yeah.
So when you break it down like that, some people are like, oh yeah, like listing in the spring is actually might cost me money. Yeah, I might sell 20K higher, but I'm going to spend 40 grand in carrying costs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to run the numbers. It'll always make sense that way. But yeah, like construction loans are just they're like I fund construction stuff too in the privates that I do. I see the project and I'm like, they're willing to pay the 14%, the 14.5%. Like some people send me deals too, and because I refer some deals over, and it's 14.5% construction loan and stuff like that. So
crazy
expensive.
So what I want to do is CIBC construction loan. And it's definitely not that expensive, but essentially they send an appraiser. So if you're going to do this master plan, you have to give them the drawings of the final product, and they'll appraise that final product on the street and like in the current market and all that good stuff. So then they lend on that appraised value a construction loan for you to actually complete the work. And then at the time that it's done, you have that appraisal of what they project it's going to be once it's done, and then refinance, sell, whatever the case may be, to pay that loan back.
Yeah.
But essentially the bank will just give you that to do it, which is interesting to me because usually many people that do flips, you're fronting the flip with your own money.
Yeah. A lot of the time they need the money in the week. And a lot of the time it's an off-market deal, like their neighbor selling it, and they know that
that's
this
what they come
person's
to. You need to go to private if you need money in a week.
Exactly. If they need money in a week, right? And that's where I'm like, okay, like I like the project.
There's so much money everywhere to find if you need it, but
so there's one deal, just as an example for people, like this girl lived like near the lake in West Oakville, and she would build homes, two big homes a year, and sell them. She was a designer and a builder. And one of her neighbors passed away. The son approached her and said, "Hey, I'd like to sell this off market. Do you have any interest in it?" And so she had her money tied up in like a $20 million project, but she's like, I don't want to miss out on this deal. So that's where she's like, I need the financing. So she came to the guy that I work with, and then the pool of investors go in, because people are like, how do you get those returns? It's like, well, someone sees an opportunity and they're willing to take money from us. So that's an example. Yeah. Anyways.
Interesting. Smart. I want to be part of your will too.
Okay. Deal.
In 25 years.
Yeah, 25 years we'll switch.
We'll reevaluate.
Yeah. Hopefully our podcast is worth millions by then. Anyways, you got anything else?
Nope.
You ready to go to bed?
Yes.
It's a late one today, guys. Anyways, thanks so much for watching.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. We're going to try and fit in one more episode before Brooke goes to Florida and enjoy some sunshine. Yeah. Because there's no sun here.
I'm low on vitamin D, so I booked a trip.
Yeah, you're going in a week? Less than a week?
I'm going on Friday.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah. All right, guys, we'll try and see you one more time before she goes away. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you are on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review. And if you want to chat about the market, you totally can. It's a free call with Brooke and I. You can book it down below. It's in the description. It's just our calendar. You can book it at a time that works for you, and we go over any of your needs, and you can see if we're a good fit for you guys. So if that interests you, please book it, and we'd love to hear from you. Anyways, we'll see you next week. Take care.
See you.
Bye.